Hi, plumbing professionals, and welcome to another episode of the Plumbing Webmasters podcast. I'm Madison.
I'm Amberlyn.
Today, Amberlyn and I are going to be talking about something a little bit more serious than our usual topics. We're going to be talking about adapting your customer service to better serve your clients during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, hopefully you can adapt this particular lesson that we talk about today to any future circumstances that are similar to COVID-19. But then again, hopefully we won't have to deal with another situation like this. Hi, Amberlyn.
Yeah, no, this is pretty rough, so let's try to have this be a one and done.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Now, customer service, there's a lot of ideas that can bring to mind. But let's go ahead and establish what we're talking about. Amberlyn, what do you think about when you hear the word customer service?
When I think customer service, I think like when I contact a company, I want to make sure they can answer all my questions, that they can do the service I need for them to do. They do it timely and in an effective manner, and that it's a pleasant experience.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think Amberlyn has drawn attention to something that we really need to stress during this time. Good customer service isn't restricted to that service call, the time where your plumber is actually on site and you're dealing with the situation. Good customer service occurs before, after, and during the service that you provide. And I think it all starts with really great communication, which is what we'll talk about here in a little bit. Now, Amberlyn, if our plumbers really nail great customer experience and adapt it specifically to help people remain calm and keep them safe during this COVID-19 crisis, what sort of benefits do you think they can expect?
Well, it's like we said, it's not just during the COVID-19 crisis. These sort of ways you can do customer service will benefit you throughout your company's interactions, but you can for sure get very heartfelt reviews on the platforms we've previously discussed. You can get a lifetime client, which is great for your business. Return clientele is always amazing. Make sure that you can get some referrals. That person will be like, hey friends, hey family, I met this really awesome plumber and they handled all my services. They can handle yours too. And of course, mentions on social media. And finally, you're kind of really giving back to your community. It's kind of a blessing to them to see such a great plumber handling things during this time, particularly going out of their way to provide the best customer service.
That's a very good point. And I think good customer service, really nailing it now, especially during the COVID-19 crisis when people are so scared and intimidated about letting people into their home. I think showing that you care about their concerns and that you're working hard to meet them and to cater towards them, I think you could be generating some lifetime clients if you do it well. So that's something to keep in mind as we move forward. Now, like we said earlier, good customer service begins and ends with really clear and courteous communication with your clients. Now, you're going to need to communicate what steps you are taking to make sure that your clients are safe and looked after during this time while you provide service for them. That's something that they need to hear to help keep them calm and to provide them with assurances that they're choosing the right company for their needs. Because they're not just fixing a plumbing issue, they're maintaining the safety of themselves and any family members that they have living with them as well.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. It's really important to go ahead and from the first onset, and then even when you guys are on the way to the plumbing job site, to say, hey, look, this is what you should expect, which normally you can do with your plumbing service, but particularly during this time, just say, hey, we're going to attempt to maintain social distancing. Once we identify the issue, this is how we're going to handle it. and just really express it clearly and concisely so they go, okay, we know what to expect and how to maneuver ourselves around to keep ourselves safe and get this really important service handled within our home.
That's a very good point, because there's so many different services that a plumber provides, and while most of them should still be available during this time, you have to think about how your plumbing business can maintain your services while still limiting interaction with people in order to keep them safe, because that's such a huge part of protecting your clients, and keeping other people safe is limiting the interaction where possible.
For sure, like social distancing, the 6 foot rule, of course. But for the plumbing services specifically, say they call in and they say, hey, we have a clogged drain. Well, get specifically the location they think the drain is the issue of. Say, okay, well, what we can do is we can go through, if they have a back door that's closer to the drain, go through the back door and they'll stay in the front of the house so you can go ahead and assess it. If you have to move around the house to find the location of an issue, say, okay, before we go ahead and move, this is where we're going to be next so that you guys can ensure everyone stays safe. Um, it's a great way for everyone to stay safe and for you to still be able to handle your services in the way you normally would. And it wouldn't infringe upon you making sure the job is done correctly in any way.
That's a very good point, Amberlynn. And it's a real challenge. You know, you have to maintain that distance as much as possible, but at the same time, you got to uphold that same standard of service that you're known for already. And doing both of those can be a challenge, but it's very possible, and the rewards can be pretty spectacular. Now, one additional challenge that you're going to be facing during this time when it comes to communication is simply maintaining that positive attitude. Your plumbers are going to be dealing with dozens of people in a very short period of time, and many of them are probably going to want to talk about the current crisis. Oh, COVID-19 this, COVID-19 that. Oh, I'm so concerned about so-and-so. And while you can definitely understand it and it's easy to empathize with them, you got to continue to express that empathy even after dozens of people have pushed you past your limit of wanting to ever hear about COVID-19. So that's something to plan about in the head. You're going to hear about it a lot in the next month or so. And if you're not ready for it, it would be easy to get a little grouchy when it comes to customer service.
For sure. It's definitely one of those things, like you said, everybody wants to talk about it right now. And it is really important to maintain that empathy. The best thing to do is just express it, say, yeah, I understand. It's hard right now, and I'm going to get you great service. And then when you move on to the next job site, just try to maintain that. Yep, it's hard. We're going to go ahead and get you this plumbing issue fixed, and we're all going to make it.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And you know, you also have to take some time for yourself too. Obviously, you're dealing with a very stressful situation when you're going in and having these interactions with people. So take some time for yourself to make sure that you're looked after and that your mental health is cared for as well. After all, if you're not serving yourself, then it makes it hard to serve other people as well. And ultimately, if you need to look after both yourself and other people too. Now, it's not enough to just say that you're going to do something as well. You have to actually follow through. And if you're going to follow through effectively with good customer service, it's going to require some serious planning. As we all know, there are a few steps that everyone is taking to keep people safe during this time. And a lot of times that starts with wearing masks on a regular basis. When you're on your calls and in close contact with customers, that is an essential step, isn't it, Amberlynn?
It is for sure. And another essential step that you might want to consider taking is including gloves for your plumbers to use on
Mm,
site. Now, there's not always going to be an opportunity. They might have a specific job that requires them to be able to use their hand free of gloves. And that's okay as long as they have at least 2 sets on the job site. And another important thing is that if they do take those gloves off, to go ahead and wash their hands and sanitize them.
that's a very good point. I think one great way of looking at it is see how you can minimize your impact in the area, or your presence, you might even say. Look for ways to limit the number of places you touch barehanded, by wearing gloves and wiping down areas after you finish service. I would even go as far as saying wipe down the entire area you just serviced, especially if it's just under the sink, or maybe you've installed a new faucet, something like that. Wipe it all down and sanitize it real quickly and let the customer know that you did that. One, you're actually providing some very serious protection for them, and two, they're going to appreciate that so much that you've taken those steps. Now, there are some additional things you can do, especially when it comes to personal interaction. And I'd say just limit that personal interaction as much as possible. There are plenty of ways to do that, aren't there, Amberlynn?
There are, for sure. Now, at the start of a service and you get a call saying, hey, there's an issue with my plumbing system, you might want to consider if an on-site inspection is 100% necessary. There are video calls you can do to try to see if you can just talk it out with them and see what the issue is, instead of having to increase interaction through person-to-person inspection. Now, that could, it might sound a little silly. Like if it's something like a water heater, you might want to be on site to see if you can identify the severe issue. But if it's a clogged drain, you might be able to say, okay, that is something we can handle on this date, and get a visual at the same time. Now, if you do have to be on site for the inspection, remember to maintain that 6-foot social distancing rule to increase safety for everybody included.
That's a very good point. I think a lot of people, especially as a plumber, when you're already used to providing good customer service in a face-to-face interactive setting, getting used to limiting that can be difficult at first. So it's going to take a lot of mental preparation on behalf of your plumbers to say, okay, I'm going to limit the number of times that I interact with the client. I'm going to make sure that there's protective measures in place every time, such as wearing the mask, keeping gloves on when possible, being careful what objects are passing forth between you and the client, such as paperwork, stuff like that. And then also keeping a very close eye. This is a tangent, but keeping a very close eye on the health of your plumbers as well. You want to make sure that they're doing well, so that clients are kept safe during that time. And these are just a few steps that you can take, but there's plenty of steps there's plenty of opportunities to help keep your plumbers and your clients safe, aren't there?
There are, for sure. And you can even go ahead and do a little bit more research, but these are just the basic steps to make sure everybody stays secure during this really hard time. Now, there are other things you can do to improve customer service this time by working with your community.
Oh, that's such a great point. Like even beyond your business, there are many people in your community, even within just your immediate neighborhood, who need help with basic services and essentials during this time. And sometimes good customer service is recognizing that your effect on people doesn't end when you finish providing service and you walk away from their home. Good customer service can also go beyond that. And that's something that we'll talk about here as well. So, customer service doesn't have to end when your plumber walks out the door and wraps up the repair or replacement or original installation. Customer service right now has an opportunity to go even beyond your business. And that means opportunity serving the community. Although there's a lot of ways to serve the community right now, isn't there, Amberlynn?
For sure. There's a lot of people during this time that really genuinely need some help. And you might want to consider going ahead and being able to offer that to them. just reaching out and saying, hey, if you need anything, our plumbing company is here, we're here, and you can give them even a specific email address you can make just dedicated to answering their questions or helping them out when they need it. Another thing you can do is there's a lot of elderly people that can't necessarily go to the grocery store right now, which is kind of unfortunate.
Mm.
So delivering groceries might be a good idea if possible. Having your plumbers go ahead and just saying, hey, we're from here and we're just trying to help out our community. Here's some groceries so you can make it through.
Mm. That's a very good point. And, you know, while this sort of customer service is essentially optional, it can make a tremendous impact on your community. And while ultimately, you know, you shouldn't try to turn it into a marketing experience because people see right through that, it is a real opportunity to make connections with people, long-term connections. And if you can help people during this time, they're always going to remember that, what you did for them. Now, even if you can't spare the time, maybe you have a small crew and you know you can't spare a whole lot of time to these sort of activities, you can just take a moment at the end of each service visit and you know just talk with your customer maybe for a couple minutes. If you're a believer, you can offer up a prayer real quickly and you know pray for what they're going through. And even that show of compassion and empathy is enough to really make a mark on people, and it makes a difference for them. So with that, that's just something to keep in mind. Again, it's optional, but it can have such an amazing effect for people in your community. So we've talked a lot about, you know, customer service today and given you some inspiration, hopefully, for how you can better serve your clients. Amberlyn, let's do our takeaways. What would you say is the most important takeaway for plumbers from this particular episode?
The most important takeaway is to continue your services, but make sure you go ahead and share that empathy and give them the best service you can while following those guidelines set forth by, for example, the CDC, and making sure your plumbers are safe and your clients are safe.
That's a very good point. I think for me, my key takeaway is it takes both communication and follow through, or careful planning, you might say. One, you need to express what you're going to do. And two, you need to plan ahead and make sure that your team are both physically and mentally prepared to follow through with your plan. You do both of these, and you're going to have some really grateful and safe clients, as well as a safe team as well. So keep that in mind as you move forward in the following weeks. Well, we're very grateful that you listened in with us today, and hopefully you've been inspired to help your community during this time. We'll go ahead and sign off here. Thank you very much again. We'll see you next time.